This is Continuum Drag, a weekly podcast where we revisit sci-fi, fantasy, and just plain weird shows.
This week, The Stranger.
Same trees, flowers, it's like a dream.
Perhaps. But for many years, our scientists have discussed the possibility of a Terra twin, as your scientists must also have done. That is, two planets flung out from the sun at the same time, both of equal size and gravity, and orbiting exactly opposite, so that neither ever sees the other. Cooling simultaneously, oceans forming together, and the first germs of life appearing there as here. I'm sure you know nothing exists by chance in life, Neil.
Effect and cause, cause and effect.
Precisely. And so as life developed here on Terra, its counterpart developed on its twin. For every mountain and valley here, its counterpart developed there. And so on through the many long ages.
Welcome to Continuum Drag, the podcast that knows the only way to incapacitate a man is with a karate chop to the throat. I'm Luke, here with my co-host Jordan. What's real, Jordan?
Did he hit the guy directly in the throat?
I mean, we'll get into it, but I think he did it several times.
I think that if you get hit in the throat, it's game over.
But with a karate chop specifically. Nothing else will do.
Will, you ever karate chopped anyone?
I can't say that I have, but I was thinking if karate was like a mandatory thing for space, the space program in this movie.
In NASA? It definitely is.
It was just assumed that this was, there's no backstory or just like he has these skills.
And that voice, of course, is our returning guest, Will. Welcome back, Will.
Thank you for having me.
What were you here watching last time? I was trying to remember the name of it.
The Leonard Nimoy masterpiece.
I do remember that.
The race car.
Baffled.
Baffled, yeah.
I couldn't remember the title of it.
You know what's
to save my
funny?
life.
When we were talking about things to watch for this podcast, there was one I was going to put on the list, and I realized it's almost the exact same plot as Baffled. And I thought, what a torture to have made you watch two of the exact same. It wasn't a race car driver, but it was something very, very similar, where I think he also gained psychic powers and then became a detective. Yeah. But apparently it was a real theme in the 70s.
You may remember that him being a race car driver had absolutely nothing to do with the plots.
It was just in The Rider for Nimoy. He's like, I don't care what you have to be playing, but I'm getting in a race car.
I mean, when you write your own ticket.
Yeah.
Well, what we're watching this week is a TV movie failed pilot called The Stranger, originally broadcast on February 26, 1973 on NBC. It's a little TV movie. Here's some. I've been doing a bunch of trying to dig up on this because there's not a lot. There's not a lot about it. And here's a couple little fun things about the actors in it, actually.
Oh, okay.
One, the guy who played the villain, Cameron Mitchell. Mm-hmm. I'm like, what's this guy done? And he has a movie from 2018. And I was like,
really?
I was like,
No way.
How is that possible? It's because he was in Orson Welles' Other Side of the Wind that got released last year. That Netflix film. So he's in that movie. And I was like, whoa.
Damn.
Talk about going from like an auteur to the lowest point of a TV movie.
I'm looking at his actual last credit was in 1995 playing Dr. Cadaver.
Also, our romantic lead, the woman in this film, Jordan, she was in Galactica 1980.
Was she really?
She's in the first episode. I believe her character's named Anne. My guess is she plays the secretary to the professor in that show.
Oh, that's funny. I don't remember. But it's the actress is Sharon Acker. For
Yes, Sharon
whoever
Acker.
knows who that is. I don't, unfortunately.
Anyway, that was a little fun. Before we get into it, though, I'm going to give us a little quick idea of what was going on in the world around the time this came out, just for funs.
Mm-hmm.
It's, one day, February 26, 1973. You know what? I think I might have messed up how I did this, but whatever. I'm still going to do it. All my dates are from August, so I'm like, wait, that's not February.
No. Well, it's 1973.
It's somewhere in 73.
It's when people were still talking about this because it made such a splash. In August, people were still like, stranger.
Here's all I got for you. The let's see if I can pronounce this. The Normalstrog robbery happened, which is what created Stockholm Syndrome.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. That was
that's
the
interesting.
origin of it. Dave Chappelle was born.
Mm-hmm.
And director John Ford and J.R.R. Tolkien died around this time.
Oh.
Or not, depending on how my dates are. Really whiffed that one. All right, but you know what? Let's get into this show. Here is the IMDb summary for The Stranger. After a freak mishap, an astronaut finds himself on an almost precise copy of Earth, bracket, right down to the Plymouth cars, end bracket. However, this planet has 3 moons and is run by an Orwellian government called the Perfect Order. And that is courtesy of Leo L. Schwab.
Let me say one thing before we start. We can talk about this in any order, but 2 things we have to talk about are, one, is this an Orwellian sort of organization and world they live in? And the second thing, is this an actual replica of Earth, and does that make sense in any way? Those are just 2 things I'm throwing out there before we get into it.
Well, I couldn't agree more that we have to talk about both of those things.
Do you want to talk about them now, or do you want to wait?
No. I'm just throwing it out there.
These are the seeds we're going
yeah,
to
that's
plant.
right. Yeah, that's right.
I do want to say that whoever wrote that summary nailed it, because the fact that there's like no Florida on this like Earth 2,
No.
but there's like the exact like 1973 like Pontiac whatever was hilarious.
It is.
There's no change in the world whatsoever except for that it's like.
It is so weird because they're like, it's identical, except that it's not. I'm like, wait, which is it?
Yeah.
All right. As it mentions, we start in space with an astronaut in a space capsule, I guess, sort of like the Apollo 11 orbiter. Like it does seem like a 60s space capsule, right?
I thought that I didn't even think at first when you first see, because it's the title credits. You see the stranger comes up, and then there's little tiny. I think you said it before we started recording, like a little thimble is what it looked like, and it does sort of look like almost someone just threw it in front of the camera. It's not the greatest special effect ever, or practical effect, I suppose. But I didn't think it looked like what I imagined the spaceship would look like. Is that just me?
Well,
it didn't look like your classic like.
I watched that moon documentary, the moon documentary where they land on the moon.
Mm-hmm.
But Apollo 11, I don't know. I think that's what that capsule looked like. It was just like a little
right?
like,
Mm-hmm.
or
A
this,
little tripod that just lands.
yeah.
Either way, it fits 3 men in it.
3 men. Those men, our hero, Colonel Neil Stryker.
Mm-hmm.
What a name.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And 2 other guys, Steve and Mike.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, don't worry. You don't need to learn too much about them.
I do like what we learned about Steve is Steve or Mike. Oh, Mike. He just wants to get home to his new wife. There's a weird. She's like, but you can't get home to that new wife, eh? And he's like, you know it. But they're like returning from deep space in this little capsule, and they're like lost or something.
Well, I think what they say is that they're something is not going right with like their control panel, and they're having communication issues with Houston as well. So they're at least off course where they're supposed to be. I don't know how that really makes sense because I think they're just orbiting. But anyways, things are not. They're having some issues, but no one seems that worried about it. I would be a lot more worried in space if they're like, yeah, by the way, the computer's not working. We don't know where you are, and you're floating blindly. And they're like, I guess we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Get back to that wife of yours.
It like struck me as odd that in 1973 being within our galaxy was still like, or within our solar system was still like so far into deep space. Like all of this is really happening within the observable solar system. There's a whole other human race.
Inconceivable.
Yeah.
I do like, because pretty much immediately things start going wrong and their little capsule starts spinning and stuff. But did you catch just as everything goes wrong, there's like one line there that I think Neil's in the middle of speaking as things go wrong.
What was it?
It's just so weird because they're like, we'll be fine. We'll get back soon. And like, as everything goes wrong and Neil's cut off saying this, he's like, hey, Mike, how about a nice, thick, juicy? And that's where it ends. Like, that's the end of the line. And I was just like,
I don't remember that.
I want to hear how this ends. I believe they're talking about like what they're going to do when they get home. And I'm just like, what a weird line. Someone's just like, and stop.
I think because everyone knows it's a steak. It's got to be a steak, right?
Well, I mean, that's the idea, but it's some writers just like laughing it up. He's like, oh, what a way to start this show.
So when I want to ask you, when the thimble starts spinning and the astronauts start shaking and convulsing, what did you think was going to happen next? Did you guys know what the movie was about, or? I didn't really know.
I didn't either.
I thought they were being possessed by like some alien force. I thought it was going to be like Body Snatchers, kind of like.
I was unnerved because you're right. It starts shaking. I'm like, oh, what's going to happen? I'm going to crash, blah, blah. And it's like hard cut to black. And then he just is like in a hospital bed. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, they don't have to pay for that actual ship crashing anywhere.
I mean, I guess that's part of the mystery, but I was also just like, I'm like, oh, here we go. And I'm like, wait, What happened here? Because it is a pretty abrupt cut into the hospital. And what do we kind of learn happened when he wakes up in this hospital? I think everybody died.
Yeah, he's been there for 2 weeks.
Been there for 2 weeks. He doesn't recognize anybody who's coming to visit him. And he's got a doctor. Pronounce this for me.
Oh, hold on.
I can't.
Revere.
Revere, thank you.
Dr. Revere. Yeah, Dr. Revere. That's right.
I've written it down, and every time
That's
I look
right.
at my own writing, I'm just like, I want to say Riviera, and I'm like, that's
Yeah,
not
Dr.
correct.
That's right,
Yeah, 'cause
Dr.
he asked
Revere.
him, do you know who Paul Revere is? And that was how he knew that they weren't in
There's something funny.
America.
Well, because you know why? Because every red-blooded, patriotic American knows who goddamn Paul Revere is. That's why.
Do you know who Paul Revere is?
Yeah, of course I do.
I actually don't really know. I know the Beastie Boys song. And I know he was some sort of American...
He's the one who, when the British were attacking, he let everyone know. The fable being he ran through the streets ringing the bell saying the British are coming. That was Paul Revere.
So if you're this guy's doctor and he's just like, Paul Revere, you're like, yeah, I love that song.
Yeah.
This guy's like,
They're like, oh.
uh-oh.
He would have thought I was Russian too.
So, but that is the point of the scene. The scene is he wakes up.
Everything's
odd, and he knows there's something wrong. And we're supposed to get the.
I mean, he knows something's wrong because the door to his hospital bed is a steel door.
Yeah, and we're also supposed to get the impression that he's like a clever guy and that he can figure things out. I don't know if the actor really sells that he's an astronaut personally. He seems more like a retired football player to me, but but anyways, the point is he's figuring out things are not what they seem, and so yes, that's his first test of the doctor is he realizes the doctor's last name is Revere, and he goes this little historical thing, and the doctor sort of whiffs at the
well, he asked
the
me, he's like, he's that great baseball player. It's like, I don't watch sports. Also, he speaks Russian too. Like, that's right. He thinks he's been captured by Russians.
Yeah, that's his first implication is
But everyone speaks perfect American English.
I know, it is weird, especially as we come to know it's like this is fake Earth or a replica of Earth, so everyone speaks perfect English.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be a plot point that the Russians had trained all these people to have like a perfect American accent, but alas.
No, it's not.
This is apropos to nothing, but Dr. Revere is trying to assure him he's on his Earth. He tells him, oh, you're a big hero now. He's like, and you'll never guess what, restaurateur Tony Angelo from Boston. He's flying in fresh scrod for you. And I was like, he's like, oh, I love scrod. I'm like, what the fuck is scrod?
I thought it was a fish.
I Googled it. It's some sort of fish.
Is it? Okay.
But it's just such a weird specific thing. You know how you love scrod? You're definitely on your Earth.
Well, so yeah, we find out he tells the doctor that he's been having really weird dreams. It's a thing he says, and I think does he also say that he's worried he's been talking in his sleep?
Yeah, and he has been. He's been talking in his sleep.
Yeah, he's been giving away NASA secrets.
Because
we find out that the doctor has been I don't know what he's been drugging him with, but they've been essentially drugging him this whole time to get information as to who he is. Again, we still don't know who the people that are doing this is. We think maybe it's Russians, maybe it's some sort of nefarious villains, but it's still these kind of cloak and dagger guys that are behind a screen that are watching him. So the whole hospital room is like a secret lab where they're watching him. He's like a little mouse going through
yeah, they're behind a two-way glass, and this is where we meet our core villain, Benedict.
Yeah, Benedict.
Good villain name.
You can tell that they're evil because the music tells you immediately that they're evil.
This guy, I think he might be evil.
And the blazer with the turtleneck is also a big hint.
Okay, yeah, there's a couple things. One, did Benedict have a facelift? Is that why his face is a little odd? Because he looks like Tony Bennett, young Tony Bennett with a facelift.
I honestly, I was like, as I was watching this, I was really hoping that, like, I was like, it would have been awesome if Leonard Nimoy was Stryker. I really missed him. That would have been the perfect villain for him because they both kind of have this very
it's
direct
true.
face.
I could definitely see it.
But yes, we find that the uniform of the villains is a double-breasted gray suit with a black turtleneck, and that's the look. Yeah. I thought it was just him, but I realized, oh no, all of them are wearing it.
It's a uniform.
Yeah, it's a uniform.
Yeah.
And Benedict's not happy with how they're getting this information out. He's a little tired of having to wait for him to like talk in his sleep to give NASA secrets up. And he teases for the first time. It's like, we should just take him to Ward E. And Ward E is going to be this thing that they constantly throw in our faces. Yeah. Until we finally, disappointingly, go to Ward E.
Yeah.
But
Ward E sucks, though. We know that for sure.
The Ward E,
yeah, that's all you know.
You don't want to go to Ward E.
You don't want to mess with the Ward.
I guess, is that the first, like, maybe Orwellian touch? Is the, like, Ward E?
Yeah, that there's this place that who knows what could happen. Are you getting brainwashed? Are you getting tortured? Or are you getting more of the above?
I don't want to spoil too much, but I did hypothesize lobotomy.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not far. I mean, you might actually be. I was gonna say you're not far off, but as far as we know, you're probably dead on the money.
Well, I think that. I mean,
we'll get into it.
That's what.
That's what happens to a few people in this show.
But when they said Ward E, were you guys not like, ooh, that's where the lobotomies happen, right? In this
I assume
perfect,
something like that would happen.
unfighting
Yeah.
Society.
Yeah, certainly. I knew something terrible was gonna happen in Ward E.
Yeah.
Should we mention that the doctor and what was Tony Bennett character's name?
Can we just call him Tony Bennett?
Yeah, and Tony,
Benedict.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's pretty close. So, so Tony Bennett and the doctor, they set it right up at the beginning that they're at odds. The doctor thinks they're pushing
Too hard.
Stryker. Is
Yeah,
it Stryker.
Neil.
Yeah, Neil.
Call him Neil.
Pushing Neil too hard, and the other guy's like, no, like we need more information, and that's like they're at heads.
Yeah, they're at odds. I mean, it's a short-lived conflict because the drugs start wearing off on Neil, and this is where he first breaks out of this hospital. Like the orderly comes to check on him, and he just like shoves the orderly over. Like it's like the weakest shove. He runs outside. Benedict runs out to stop him. We get our first karate chop of the episode. Benedict takes a karate chop. But this is something I obsessed over for the rest of the show because he chops Benedict. He starts running down this hospital hallway. Benedict shoots him in the gut.
Yeah.
Shoots Neil in the gut.
Well, he gets shot in the side.
And I would argue at no point in this show does he ever get medical attention.
Well, I think it's a well-known fact on Earth 2. A gunshot wound heals itself.
It must be the case because I kept waiting for him. At some point, he kind of puts a Band-Aid on it, but that's the most. Like I'm like that bullet's still in there somewhere.
Yeah.
It was the weirdest thing. And he's climbing staircase, like he's doing stunts. I'm like, you're dying, you're bleeding to death right now.
He's a man's man.
You don't get a name like Stryker without taking a few bullets.
But yeah, Stryker escapes the hospital. There's a classic switcheroo where he sends a dumbwaiter down to distract Benedict, and they like machine gun up a dumbwaiter. But essentially, Neil's able to escape this hospital, and when he gets out into the open world, the first thing he does is find a phone booth with no buttons or coin slot.
Mm-hmm.
Suspicious.
Yeah, something's weird.
Oh, does he get the get picked up by?
This is around where he gets picked up. Yeah.
Is that before or after?
Well, no, he tries to call Cape Kennedy first.
Yeah, he tries to
Right.
call. Yeah, exactly.
His
And
base.
he gets the operator, and they're like, "We've never heard of that before." And he's like, "You must have heard of this." And they're like, "No." And they're like, "Florida." And they're like, "We've never heard of Florida." And he's like, "No, Florida, no."
A world without Florida. It's such a. This was like the big setup. Just like wherever he is, there's no Florida here.
Yeah.
Which was like for me the most difficult thing is because if everything is supposed to be exactly the same way, down to like we speak the same language with the same accent with the same everything.
Are you saying the very flimsy sort of world they set up doesn't all add up?
Why couldn't they just let there be a floor? You know what I mean?
I know.
Like,
I know.
If it's like such a perfect replica, go take the whole way.
We might as well talk about it now. That is what we're going to find out very shortly.
Yeah,
is that
he gets in a van, he sees 3 moons, and he realizes.
he's not on Earth.
Oh, and he asks the van driver, he's like, "Is this Earth?" He's like, "What's Earth?" And we're like, "Ah!"
Yeah. Yeah, and he freaks. Yeah, it's sort of like a big pull in.
Yeah, and then there's like a big zoom, and then his eyes light up, and
So yeah,
his bullet wound continues to bleed.
He's just, just bleeding all over this guy's upholstery in his van. But yeah, I mean, let's talk about this other Earth. So theoretically, we're told later, it's a mirror Earth that orbits on the opposite side of the sun from our Earth, so we've never seen it.
Yeah.
Which I guess is a theory that existed.
Yeah, I think you and I talked really briefly, I think, about it. Or I might have actually talked to someone else in the office and bored them about it. But we talked about that this in the late 60s, early 70s, this was a very fringe sort of theory about that there's maybe a possibility that there's an exact mirror Earth and that we just can't see it because we're always being blocked by the moon, I guess. The sun. But
do you know how?
Well, no, I don't. Well,
Earth works.
Well, it's because it doesn't make any sense. It's hard to even try to figure out what the theory is.
You think we orbit each other, but the moon blocks us?
Well, no, but I mean, okay, you're right. You're right.
Sorry,
Well,
that's how hard it is to figure out this
Yeah.
show.
It would be the sun blocking. I think in the explanation in the show, it's the sun. But if it has 3 moons orbiting this,
It's
Earth
it's
too,
already deviated from us.
Yes, you would think we would see those moons, but yes, the point is, these are 2 worlds who have evolved at the exact same time. So everything has evolved. The same technology has evolved. Humans have evolved. The language has evolved exactly the same. But for some reason, there are some differences. And it is a weird thing where you think they would go one or the other. Like, this is an opposite world. It's evolved in a different way. So they speak differently, and they dress differently, and they do things differently. Or maybe it's an exact opposite. So it's like a mirror universe. But they sort of want both versions, or like it's the same, but it's different. But it almost, as we'll go through the show, it kind of hurts the show because if it's exactly the same, it's like it's hard to show what he's railing against. It's like, what's the same Earth? It's like, oh, it's just as in Florida? Well, who cares?
Yeah.
It's the same as Earth. What does it matter? It's like, oh, people button their shirts on the opposite side. Whoo, like who cares? I personally didn't think there was enough differences, and I think that's maybe would have been a problem if this became.
You didn't think there were enough differences? But everyone's left-handed in this world.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah, so
exactly. But anyways, that is
absolute no consequence.
That was because this truck driver looks at him and he's holding his bullet wound and using his right hand to smoke a cigarette, and he's just like, "Oh, you hurt your left hand or something?" I was just like, "What? Wait, what?"
Oh, do you think that's
Why
what
does
that
this
was
need
implying?
to be a plot point?
No, he says it.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
He flat out says, he's like, "Why are you smoking with your right hand?" He's like, "Did you hurt your left hand or something?"
Oh, that is weird.
And it's revealed that we all use our left hand in this world.
Yeah, they shake with the left for no reason.
Are you both right-handed?
I am right-handed. Yeah.
I'm left-handed, so I
This
might
is
be,
the world.
I might be from Terra.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, and that I guess is the other thing. It's not called Earth. It's called Terra.
Yeah. Again, English is still English though.
Yeah.
Every other word evolved the same, except for Earth and Florida.
In Florida. That's it.
I did wonder. I'm like, so all the states are named differently, or there's just no Florida in this world?
Yeah, because they all are like seemingly American.
That was such an interesting idea that even the flimsy science behind it and that it doesn't make sense that the sun would block you. There's some interesting ideas that even if like humans evolved at the same time, but different historical figures had done different things, so it would have adjusted history. That would have been interesting. Like, and then it would make sense. Oh, well, they have a completely different society. Well, because they have a different history, even though we're all humans. And that's an interesting idea, but it's almost like they didn't really want to do it. Like
and that's the next scene, kind of. That's the kind of almost where they're headed with it, because the next scene is Benedict talking to this council, the Perfect Order Inner Council, and the Perfect Order runs this world. And like, what is the Perfect Order a metaphor for?
Well, I assume it's like a Cold War communist sort of thing they're pushing.
Can we go back and flog the Earth 2 Terra thing a little bit more?
Sure.
Because I really did find it distracting. Like trying to figure out what could be the same and what could be different.
I did
like,
the exact same thing when I was watching it.
Even the First Order?
The perfect order.
The perfect order. If you have this like political system that's the perfect order, you're not going to get the Pontiac Firebird. Right. In the exact same way, like
you don't have capitalism to build it.
Yeah, you can't have physical determination in one sense and then like a whole different political system in another. Just to reiterate this point one more time, which is really going to be a lot of fun for me to riff on.
What is the political system of the perfect order? Like, what is their core operating belief?
Well, it's funny too because when they first bring it up, he's like, it's just he criticizes dictatorship.
Benedict criticizes previous dictatorships.
Yeah. And in the perfect order, there's no war. Everyone's looking after each other.
Sounds pretty good.
Everyone thinks the same thing. Like everyone agrees that they all should think the same thing. And if you don't, you go to war D.
And all the history that they teach, I assume, in school and that people know only goes back 30 years, which is when the perfect order took over. So, and they sort of like pretend nothing happened before that, or at least it's not common. It's not discussed what happened before.
Because it's a bad time. Everyone was starving.
Yeah.
Yeah, but do you think it's supposed to be like Nazi Germany or like socialist?
It's what's funny is I think
Russia?
they're splitting the difference between those two things. They want it sometimes to be Nazi Germany, and they want it sometimes to be communist Russia.
Yeah,
it's the common Nazis. Benedict's
telling the Inner Council how they have to chase down old Neil because they can't risk him out in the world in the wild, and the reason being this is the exact quote: he can't risk his freedom of thought and uncontrollable spirit. It'll spread like an infection.
Yeah.
They don't seem to know it. Like, they've been just knocking about and hearing him talk about secrets. Like, the idea that they know he's just like, his uncontrollable spirit will be too much for our world.
Yeah.
It's such an odd idea.
Also, I've said it again.
He's a virus in uniformity.
Do you think this actor playing the role, do you think he looks like such a charismatic person who's going to, like, lead people behind him? I think he kind of looks like a dope.
Yeah, I'll say it again. I was really praying for Nimoy.
He would have sold it. Nimoy would have sold it.
Nimoy would have been perfect.
I do like the idea of the villain showing up and be like, we have to catch this guy because he's so beautiful and just like the nicest guy you'll ever meet. Like, it's just like all positive traits he's giving him. He's just like,
Right.
I'm just like, it's such a weird way to like set up your villains to be like, we got to get him because of all these awesome traits he has. He's so great. And we don't like that. It's such a telegraphing.
But I'll say they I don't think they fully realize it, but Benedict, that's the villain's name?
Yes.
They at least do give him a goal and something that he wants.
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is he just wants to avoid pain in society. That's what he says. That's interesting. That's an interesting character trait. Now again, they don't quite lean into it enough, but I was like, at least he has a point. It's not just like he's angry to be a villain, you know?
That is it. They're just like the perfect order is perfect because now there's no war, there's no starvation, so we need to protect this at all costs. Like, it's fine. Like, it's a noble goal, even if it is like we're supposed to be like communism, can't trust it.
Yeah. Especially like if there was some sort of personal like loss that happened during a civil war or something where you can really.
Well, and he does say, he's just like to his assistant, like when they're like, "What's the big deal?" He's just like, "Have you ever seen a man starve to death?" I have. Like, he really implies there was something awful before this, which. Like, that's the thing. There's like moments where you're like, oh, there's almost an idea somewhere lost in this muddled mess, but not really.
But you have a good point though, because the writer does betray his own position like
Perpetually.
Yeah, like he just assumes that everyone will see these people as evil, maybe because of the music, but that this guy, this American astronaut, is just too likable for even the villains to see a flaw, but. That they know their system is so problematic and flawed that
I do like the writers getting a note being like, I think you're a villain, like you're giving him too many good points. It's like, the music will take care of that. Don't worry about it. The composer, that's his problem. We kind of pop back to the van, and Neil's driving around. We get a little bulletin coming over the radio. This is, I think, another Orwellian bit where they kind of give you the wake thought of the day, which is kind of the most 1984 part, where it's just like, to work for the perfect order is to live in perfect harmony. Everyone remember that. That's the wake thought. But there's also a bulletin describing a escaped mental patient who fits Neil's description. At which point Niels is like, I think this is my stop. Just pull over right here, and I'll get out for a second. But that van driver, he's not fooled.
No, because he matches the perfect description. He's whatever, a beautiful American-looking 6'4",
blue eyes, just charming smile.
He's like, he had a charming smile. Wait a minute.
And the van driver hops out, jumps on a payphone, calls the Department of Protection.
Yeah.
And sort of, reports him basically, as any good citizen does.
Well, because he wants to be an honest citizen.
Well, and that is the part that came up that I'm just like, I need to know more about, because he's asking, he's like, hey, so am I going to get honor citizen points for this? Am I gonna, like, what kind of prizes do you get with these points? Like, what is an honor citizen? What are honor citizen points?
Again, there might be an interesting idea there, but they only give it. This is the only scene it ever comes up, which is, maybe there's some sort of hierarchy in society based on.
It's based on a point system.
Based on a point system of doing certain things that the perfect order has outlined in terms of points. I mean, that's kind of interesting, but that's the only scene you ever have it, so it doesn't.
If you get 250 points, you get a pogo stick.
Yeah, something.
I mean, this point system sounds really evil, but I bet you it's still better than the Radisson rewards point system.
Wow, taking Radisson down.
Just shots fired. This is the one. Radisson comes after us for this episode. And anyway, like, Neil's like basically left for a long montage where he wanders the city, as I assume he's bleeding out perpetually. He's just wandering this city. There's just loudspeakers everywhere shouting about a mental patient on the loose.
Can I mention that the police officers, or whatever they're called in this world, I guess the part of the protection center,
Department of Protection,
they also wear black turtlenecks, but they all wear black helmets. So someone decided, the costume designer, all the villains, black turtlenecks. It's the most evil thing you could wear.
This movie comes out, what, like 2 years after Star Wars? 3 years?
No, Star Wars wouldn't have come out. 77 Star Wars.
77? Because there's like an eerie stormtrooper-y vibe to the...
This is better than Star Wars.
No,
real inspiration for George Lucas.
I caught that too. I was just like, this is a real stormtrooper look. But I guess maybe that's just what... Is that what? Because the stormtroopers look like Nazis. Like, that's kind of was like that. Is that the theme? Is that where this sort of like trope comes from? Like, weren't like the SS kind of like black helmeted, black booted kind of people?
Type of people. I think just black helmets look cool.
Very shiny.
They're very shiny. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also caught that though. I'm like,
But the stormtroopers are really shiny too.
I kept making that note too. I'm like, stormtrooper, because that's exactly what that's what they look like to me, like a low budget stormtrooper.
Mm-hmm.
Neil does finally take refuge in a bookstore, and the bookstore has a Department of Communications van out front. Did you figure out why that was relevant?
No.
It took me, because I was just like, because he walks up, he sees this van that says Department of Communications on it, and it's like a repair van, and he's leaving this bookstore, and I was just like, he's staring at both these items. I'm like, is he going to steal that van, or is he going to go into that bookstore? And he chooses to go into the bookstore, and I was just like, what is that? And I realized Neil is so clever. He's seeing the only place in town whose radio is not working, so doesn't know mental patients on the loose. Because he spots a repairman going
I didn't
in.
catch that at all.
I was just
Very
like,
good.
I was just like, this is the craziest amount of subtlety for a show that is like not subtle in any other form.
You know what's funny? I thought I didn't notice that at all. So kudos to you. But I thought it was interesting. I can't think of another movie or TV show where the basic idea of someone is stuck in a world or a city or something where they're the odd person out, and the first thing they do is go to a library. I actually thought that was pretty. Oh no, a library. It's a bookstore.
Yeah, bookstore.
But,
yeah.
But I was like, that's actually a pretty good idea. That's something where you can quietly find out information.
And he uses it to the perfect extent. Like he goes in there, asks for a book on the history of the planet. That's where he learns like the perfect door has been around for 35 years, and there's no history they talk about before this. The old bookstore owner's like, all I really remember from that time was there was more laughter and music.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okie dokie. But he also, after he says that, he's like, but things are better now.
Well, he catches himself. He basically is being wistful about the time before, and then he catches himself, and you get the implication that everyone's listening at all times. Again, that sort of Big Brother idea, which we'll lay into a little deeper later. But yes, he catches himself because he's like, oh no, I'm saying something in public I shouldn't say. But then one of my favorite things in the entire movie comes up next when he what's his face does show that he's Stryker's showing that he is injured, and he's sort of like sweating.
He looks sickly.
And the guy's like, hey, want to go sleep at my place upstairs? And it seems so. I'm like, maybe that's just how they do it on Terra. But that just seems. I've never once been in a bookstore where someone's just like, you look tired. Do you want to just sleep in my apartment? And then he also was like, yeah, I do.
These are the evils of communism, Jordan. You look sick. Would you like to lay down? Oh, disgusting.
Like, let me ask you. You're in a bookstore. You're injured, and someone says, "Do you want to go sleep upstairs?" You taking that offer?
I think I might.
Really?
Yeah.
No. I would avoid it at all costs.
Really?
I just pretend I'm not injured.
I feel like you probably underestimate how tired you'd be with a bullet hole in your stomach.
Perhaps.
You've lost all of your blood.
Yeah.
Aren't you a little afraid you're going to wake up without your clothes on?
It's just like lying down is really sounds pretty good.
Even right now, Will's imagining lying down.
If someone offered me a bed, you hard to say no.
That's what we should bring for our guests. We should have a hammock, an option of like doing this from a hammock, from the prone position. But he does take him up on that offer. He heads upstairs for a little lay down, and the old bookstore owner's just like, well, he looks really sick. I better call the Department of Medical Assistance to give him a hand. This is where we have a jump forward in time, and we see that he's like just essentially wrapped a bandage around the bullet wound. He's like, all fixed. I did it myself.
In the next scene, he's going to grab a pair of scissors as his weapon. And this is, we didn't do a count, but this is the second time in the show where he's grabbed scissors weapon.
Not the last time.
And not the last time.
No.
His go-to is always grab a pair of scissors.
He'll do that 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
Same with the karate. Like it's like karate chops and stabbing someone are his go-to. You're right. I think this must be NASA training because he goes to it every single time.
And NASA, they like have a table with a bunch of different instruments in front of you. And like, so someone's attacking you and you grab the hammer. They're like, no, it's the scissors every time.
You've chosen poorly.
Yeah.
You're dead. But who should show up to help him? Why, it's a lady doctor who we saw at the hospital earlier. And
She ratted him out earlier.
I left it out till now because it's a very funny scene. And I never thought it would come back up. But he runs into a room at the hospital, sees this woman, and she's like, I won't tell anyone you're here. And she runs out, and the first person she bumps into, she's like, he's in there. Like, there's like a 10-second gap between her saying, I won't tell you, and then immediately telling
Now,
her.
here's my second question for both of you. You work in the hospital. You're that nurse.
Yeah.
You see the guy that's wounded.
She's a doctor.
She's a doctor, sorry.
He's his 6'1", blue eyes.
Yeah.
Now
Now,
striker.
and he goes, hey, don't tell anyone I'm here. When you leave that room, you telling someone? Because I'm telling you this, 100% I'm going, there's a guy back there bleeding. I'm ratting him out in a second. I'm not costing my getting rid of my cushy job at the Department of Medical Assistance.
You know, it's funny because I actually did think about this too, but like we learned later. Again, am I allowed to give stuff away?
Yeah, fine, go for it.
Yeah, it came out in 1973. The spoilers are gone at this point.
You find out later that her brother sort of been like abducted by the Perfect Order, and so she probably at some level is looking for some form of a resistance, and maybe if it comes in the form of a bleeding out alien,
the most beautiful man she's ever seen.
Yeah, maybe you would think about it for a minute,
half a second.
If you were really buying into the Perfect Order, 100% you're like, sorry, dude.
Would you rat him out?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, so we'd all rat him out. He had no chance. So he got. Well, no, he didn't get lucky because she ratted him out too.
Let me put it this way: if I just worked at a hospital, I walked into a room and a dude was bleeding out everywhere, and it's like, "Don't tell anyone I'm here." I'm like, I think I gotta.
Yeah.
I think it really begs a larger question. If you're part of like a uniform thinking dictatorship, are you buying into it, or are you smart enough to, or I guess?
Well, and we should mention though,
is a relative term, but
at this point, we haven't really seen anything that's bad yet. I mean, people have talked about like
it's exactly the same.
Well, I know it's like you get the idea that there might be some sort of free speech suppression, and there might be like an autocratic government, but other than that,
it
there's
is
really
crazy,
not
actually,
that much.
because you're right. We've seen him wander around the city. It's not like he's seen bread lines. It's not like he's seen any of the things you associate with like communist Russia.
It's like they stepped outside in like Indiana and just filmed this movie.
Yeah.
So it's exactly the same as like 1970s America.
And I can say, like, I think we all probably know the reason why it is exactly the same is it's much cheaper than having to do these things. But they almost, because they went in that direction, it hurts the show a little bit more. Do you know what I mean? Like, it would have been fun if some things were different. Everyone wears funny shoes. I'm like, oh, that's different. But like, it's like, no, we'll just film it with normal people walking around because it's cheaper.
Well, the other thing too is like when he's stuck in the hospital, they make a whole point about like the windows are blocked out, so he can't see the outside world or know where he is. But then when he gets out there, it's exactly the same.
You wouldn't know the difference. But yes, this doctor, what's her name, Jordan? Do you remember?
Ooh, I'm gonna look it up. Her name is Dr. Oh yeah, I did know.
It's like Benita or something like that.
Bettina. It's Dr. Bettina Cook, but Bettina is not a name, is it?
Bettina Cook?
Bettina is a name I've never heard before. It's both Betty and Tina combined.
Yeah.
Bettina.
Is that
beautiful? Is
that a Terra name, or is that just like in the 70s people are like Bettina's coming
I've never heard the name before.
I think this writer is just a real genius.
Because Benedict's a normal name on Earth, but not Bettina.
I mean, it might mean something, but really she's there, and everyone, the viewer, is really just supposed to go like, I smell a romance here.
I also wonder, do you think that the karate chop stuff in the script came first, or the name Stryker came first, and then they gave him the karate chops?
I think the actor showed up and he's like, hey guys, check this out. Ha! And they're like, oh, we got to put that in.
Yeah, we got to call him Stryker now.
I've been studying karate, you guys. There's a weird scene here. Bettina basically is like, hey, I recognize you from the hospital. You should go back there. You should turn yourself in. It's not so bad here. Neil's just like, yeah, okay. He like lies to her. He's like, okay, if you drive, we'll do it. And this is kind of becomes our scene where they're driving around. They get to know each other. Mm-hmm. She learns he's not such a bad guy, and she's going to join his side because this is sort of what happens here. And there's some weird sequence. Like, there's a scene where they're driving around, and she's just like, he's like, turn right. She's like, the hospital's not right. He's just like, yeah, I lied to you. We're not going to the hospital. And then a car drives by, and so the car doesn't notice that he's kidnapped her. He forces himself upon her.
Yeah.
Yes, but it is 1973, so when he kisses her, she's very happy about it.
Yeah, she's into it. She's into being forced upon.
Forced upon. And, of course, this is where they talk about her brother. It is funny, though, because there's this implication that like he's going to spread free thought like a virus. And when they start, and they're talking about him, and she's like, you're a mental patient. We got to go back. He's like, and she's like, my brother's a mental patient. He had to go get treated by the Perfect Order too. He's perfectly fine now. And he's like, is he? And she's like, well, no, actually, he was some sort of political dissident, and he disappeared, and I've never seen him again. Yeah. She's like, hey, wait a minute, I don't like it's this weird turn where she just says, it's all good, and then she thinks about it for 10 seconds. She's like, no, wait, I've never seen him again, and he's disappeared into Ward E. Wait, is something bad going on?
It was he really had to dig deep with the "Are you sure?" and then she completely reverses course.
But more exciting, a helicopter shows up in 5 seconds.
Well, it's because, unfortunately, before she believed him, she turned on the two-way radio.
Yeah. So, yeah, what we find out is in this world, there's also two-way radios where I guess at any point, if you have it on, the government can listen to you.
Jordan, in Terra, radio listens to you.
Right. But we also find out that, much like 1984, we're also going to see TV screens that apparently watch you at all times, too.
Just like a smart TV, Jordan.
Exactly.
Which is what is in all the comments.
Yeah. Is that right?
Of the shows. It's like, oh, it's just like a smart TV. It watches you.
Yeah.
But yes, it does lead to the best scene. As far as I'm concerned, the best scene of this thing is
it ends in the best way.
A helicopter shows up, and there is a car helicopter chase, which actually looks like the most dangerous stunt I have ever seen.
Yeah, it's crazy. The helicopter is really like flying
low,
aggressively through those trees.
Like you're seeing it fly 10 feet off the ground, 6 feet off the ground at times, through trees, and you're seeing it clip the branches off trees. Like this helicopter is so low and moving so fast.
They also knew this must have been what was in the commercials, because this scene goes on for a while too, because they're like, this is our good stuff. This is what you've been waiting for, the helicopter chase.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. I felt like it definitely went on long, but I was just I kept waiting for it to crash, because it is so. It looks like there were no laws at this point in time. Like It is 10 feet behind this car it's chasing. It's all in like one big shot, and I'm just like, this could all end in tragedy at any moment.
But it does end in tragedy, and unfortunately, I think the worst part of the helicopter chase is the actual explosion, because what happens is he's also a great driver, as I think every lead in the 1970s is. They're always great drivers, and so he's able to maneuver into a position where it ends up flying into a windmill, like on a farm, and then it explodes in the funniest explosion ever. It's just like, I don't know what the effect is they did it, but it looks terrible.
It's an optical printing thing where you'd like cut out one thing and put, like, it's like Photoshop basically, but it is the worst Photoshop because you can actually see the edges around the explosion from whatever scene it was on before. Like they didn't even bother like blending it into the background. They're like, and now explosion. It's like, ooh, what happened?
I thought it was great. I was super impressed by that sequence.
I also love that chase. That is, as far as that is the best part of this whole show for me, was that helicopter chase.
The idea of shooting that sequence like as like a filmmaker is like terrifying.
Oh, I kept looking for like any sort of anecdote about how like 3 people were killed in the making of that sequence.
Yeah,
because I'm just like, this is so dangerous.
Yeah.
Anyway, she, after they escape this helicopter, takes him to a pig farm.
This was a bit of a turn, huh? Because we should mention that up until this point, Bettina has ratted him out. She's seemed very, for lack of a better term, brainwashed by the perfect order. But then she now takes him to a farm to see like an old professor of hers, and then it seems like she's now turned. Like she's like, I'm on his side.
She thought about how her brother, she hasn't seen her brother in a few years, and she's like, why is that?
Yeah.
She hadn't thought about it before.
And this guy seems to be living. I think they're sort of implied that he's a little bit, quote unquote, like off the grid. He isn't as monitored as everyone else that's living maybe in the cities, because he seems to have a little bit more free thought.
Professor Macaulay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that seems to be the case with him. Although we come to learn he also has been a political dissident. Like he's been toward E.
Yeah,
and they made him a heroin addict.
Is that what they did to him? They did.
I don't know.
Well, no, what they've
it's like
implied,
the Soma bit or something.
They've implied that, yes, he tells them there's 2 things he does. One, he gives them, in the greatest bit of exposition where it's just a long shot, he just explains everything about the double Earth theory as they just walk, and so you're like, now you're all caught up, everyone. That's how it works, and it's like, and there's no questions, and old
none of it adds up.
Stryker's just like, yeah, makes sense. As an astronaut, that makes sense. But then, yes, he very shortly after, they again hint this room E. What do they call it? Ward E, not the room E. It's room E is in the ward. And that the torture is so bad that he now has to take some sort of insulin or something as a way
he says it like they could have affected my brain, but they decided just to affect my body at Ward E for some reason. And now he's like, I'm gonna die in 2 years, and between now and then I just have to constantly be taking my pills.
But he's still going to work and everything.
Yeah. And
he's looking after the pigs.
He works for their space program. Like he's like a high-ranking official in their space program. I couldn't figure it out. 'Cause I'm like, they know you don't agree with them, but they've made you.
Well, I think they've broken him is the idea. They've he's no longer a dissident because they've brought him to Ward E.
So we've had the one kiss that
forced
upon her, and then the one moment where she confesses that her brother was actually abducted and strained or lost. And I don't know any other moments for the rest of the movie where we're supposed to see them fall in love, but it's expected that you're going to buy that for the rest of the movie.
It has happened now.
Yeah.
I think it is a bit of the thing we've seen with a lot of these older shows where the viewers at this time had seen the same thing over. They just knew what they were supposed to expect as a viewer, which is here's an attractive man, here's an attractive woman. They're both the leads. They're going to fall in love. That's just the way it is. So, and we don't need to really do all the dirty work because you get it, we get it. Let's just get on to Double Earth, you know?
Get on to the important
You're
stuff.
right. Yeah.
But you're right, because I think it might be the next scene where she says to the professor, like, be careful because I love him. And I was like, love him? Like 5 seconds ago, like, you didn't love him, but yeah, that's how fast it moves.
Love at first sight. Happens all the time. This is the funniest part for her arc right here is the professor's like, hey, listen, me and you, Neil, let's work together. Let's get you off this planet. But you know what? You can't trust women. They'll betray you every time. I, as a professor, have had this happen to me multiple times. And he turns to Bettina, and his exact quote to her is, hold on, where is it? Bettina, the kitchen's over there. I'm sure Neil is as hungry as I am. This is his house. She's never been. I don't know. Like he sends her to the kitchen to make them dinner. Will they discuss how they're going to get Neil off the planet?
Yeah.
Well, he did point out where it was.
Yeah.
He helped her.
It was so aggressive. They walk in the house and she's like, Bettina, kitchen now. But his plan is basically, hey, I'll take you to work. We'll swap you out with one of the astronauts. You can fly one of our spaceships home. It'll be great.
Yeah.
I thought this would have been more. They would have pushed into this a little bit more. This idea that they're going to do this
Swapperoo?
Switcheroo, swapperoo. But it's just like, oh yeah, I have all the documents. Everything's good.
Yeah, I loved how easily. It would be great if I could see the flight manuals. Oh yeah, I've got them all right here. No problem.
No problem. And then and it just goes to I was like so confused for a second. Hard cut to Neil making out with Bettina. And then she pulls away and it's like, all right, goodbye forever. Please leave. I'm like, whoa.
But we should say, so the plan they're doing is the professor and Stryker are going to pretend that Stryker is another astronaut. They're going to somehow have fake documents that we'll probably check out, and they're going to drive to the. They're going to. It's like it's a launch site, right?
Yeah, it's Cape Canaveral, but in Terra.
And the hope is that he's going to be able to switch places, get onto the rocket, and
they're gonna
fly back to Earth.
Yeah, they're going to knock out an astronaut, and he's just going to jump on a rocket.
But I like that also. This planet also doesn't know about Earth.
No, they do.
Do they really though?
Yeah, they talk about it very early on. That's why they're gathering this stuff because they're like, oh man, their space program is so far ahead of us. Like,
oh, I missed that.
They're kind of there seems to be some implication that they're excited to have them because they can like.
So, do you think then that the rocket is meant to go to Earth, or
no,
he's gonna twist the wheel to the right and turn it toward Earth?
I think that's what the implication is.
Right.
He's gonna go off course. You guys, we've been talking a lot about Neil, but what's Benedict been up to?
Oh, well, I know at one point he goes and talks to the like a room of I guess it's the perfect order, like the higher ups, the powers that be.
He gets in trouble with his bosses. They call him on a big blue blinking phone, and he has to go see the perfect order tribunal, which is like a huge throne room with like very like Nazi imagery. That he walks in, and the guy who used to have his job is on the council. So I guess this is his like career trajectory if he does a good job. But basically, he's in trouble. He's lost Stryker. He's lost Bettina. He can't find Bettina anymore. And they're basically giving him like, hey, man, you got to get this figured out. He's like, all right, you know what I'll do? I'll finally go to Ward E, and we'll figure what's going on.
Yeah.
When he said he was going to go to Ward E, who did you think he was going to go visit to figure out about Bettina?
Oh, I thought it'd be the brother.
100%. I was like, we're going to meet her brother.
But it's not. It's like, hey, viewers, remember that doctor you met in like scene 1 and then we haven't talked about or seen in the next hour? Well, guess what? He's in Ward E.
He's your boss. We're going to ask him if he happens to know any, like, if you went missing, Jordan, and the police went to your boss, what would he be able to tell them?
I know. Nothing.
Also, Dr. What's his name? Revere,
Revere.
Dr. Revere.
Yeah.
He's also been completely lobotomized, so he can't talk anyway.
Yeah, that was odd, right? It's like
they really fucked that up. They over lobotomized him, and he does.
They over lobotomized him.
He seems to have a perfect record in every other way except for Stryker existing, really. But he seems to get out of the hospital like pretty easily, and then his underling over lobotomizes.
Well, you have to ask the questions before you start poking around in the brain.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, you said we didn't need him anymore.
I told you I was stuck in traffic. You went through with the surgery.
So this is a bit of a dead end, but the reason I bring it up is we get to see Wardy, which is just a white hospital.
I mean, I'll give them this. As we've mentioned, like you were saying at the beginning, when he could have just looked out the windows, it looks just like San Francisco or any sort of California city. But Wardy at least has a little bit of sci-fi elements. Like it's a sort of triangle hallway with lights along the side.
True.
And I was like, well, that's futuristic. And then they also, did you notice that they had not doors that like close like in Star Wars and Star Trek, but they were doors that
swing.
They're
automatic
closed.
doors, but they swing.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty good.
What I liked is because this all goes nowhere, and the doctor who I guess just lobotomized this other guy, she's there and she's just like, well, I guess you got nothing from him. Too bad those other astronauts are dead. And Benedict turns around and he's like, are they? And I'm like, I don't know, are they dead?
Yeah.
Tell
us.
Why? What was this tease about?
I think it was,
you guys are on the same team. Like, what's going on?
Well, I think they didn't want to close the chapter on maybe they'll bring these guys back for future episodes. But it was an odd comment.
Where is Steve and Mike? We're dying to know.
Is Mike ever going to get back to that new wife of his?
Is he going to get that big juicy thing? I don't know.
Yeah, Jordan, you're stuck out in space. Finish that sentence. I can't wait to get back to that big juicy
wife of mine.
It was the same thing. It was the big white juicy wife.
Yeah.
Oh.
But Benedict does finally catch a break when Bettina gets home, and they just like pick her up at her door. It's like, oh hey, Bettina's back. Let's grab her.
Yeah. What was her strategy though? Because so they know she's been gone. It looks like she's been abducted at one point. She goes to the professor. Then she's like, I'm going to go back to my life, kind of pretend nothing happened. But she must know she's going to get picked up right away. Like before she even gets to her door in her apartment, they grab her.
Well, I think here's the thing is I think the professor set her up. He's just like, you can't trust women. They're going to rat you out every time. And he's just like, just go home. And the professor knows she's dead.
Yeah.
You think so?
He knows exactly what's happening.
The professor sent her back to die because he's like, we can't tell her a single thing because I'm going to go send her back home and she's going to get immediately picked up. Like the professor has set her up.
So the professor is more Team Stryker than he's Team Bettina.
Oh,
and simply because they're both men?
Yeah. Well, he talks about how a woman betrayed me once, so that's why I can never trust another one. And later, when they're sneaking into the space base, they're like showing this security guy fake documents, and the security guy's like, well, I don't have this guy on my list. And the professor's like, yeah, that dumb secretary probably didn't give it to you. Like he throws some secretary who exists under the bus immediately. I'm like, I think the professor has some problems.
Yeah.
But yes, they get to this space center.
Hold on, before we get to the space center.
Oh, yeah.
There was two little tidbits that I wanted to talk about.
All right, let's do it.
So first of all, in case we didn't already hate the Perfect Order enough because of the music and the
and the nothing different.
Yeah. There is like an aside that the Perfect Order is trying to ruin whiskey. And they have like,
that's right.
Have like
that's
this
right.
Guy's moment of like, well, at least we can enjoy a whiskey together. And like, I think at this point, Bettina is in the kitchen.
Yeah, I think you're right. They went to the smoking room and
yeah.
That's right. He's like they haven't
was.
ruined whiskey yet. By the way, is she making sandwiches back there?
And then the other one was, I don't know if you remember this, but when they first arrive at the farm, he accuses one of his pigs of being a spy.
Oh, that's right. They walk
like, oh, that's hilarious. He's like, no, I'm serious. And as the audience member, you're like, whoa, is this guy serious?
They do a close up of that pig. They like cut into that pig.
But my question for you is this an Animal Farm joke? Like the pig is going to betray communism?
I think it is. I think it is an Animal Farm joke. Yeah.
This author is very literate. The author of the screenplay.
Well, I mean, the best bits of this are taken from, obviously, works like 1984 and stuff. Now, they don't realize them at all. Like, it's like, yes, the TV that can watch you. And I thought that was a pretty cool thing where he's talking to Stryker. He's like, don't come in the room with me. I'm going to go get this stuff so they don't know you're... Like, that's a neat idea. But I noticed, like, the TV's never on, nor do they develop that idea at all. Because that's a pretty cool idea. Like, they could have had Stryker having to hide in the city because there's screens everywhere, but they don't do anything with it.
Yeah, I mean that is kind of what we see with Benedict too. He's just like he's got all these guys like watching monitors to see if he sees Bettina anywhere or Stryker. Like, yeah, there could have been like a ID, like it's like facial recognition or something, but you just have a bunch of guys. But like, yeah, that's not what catches them. It's the professor sending Bettina off to die is what kind of gets them in trouble.
Yeah.
But yes, let's go to the spaceport. Professor's taking Neil there. They sneak him in as his new assistant. They're going to execute this plan. It's time to do it.
is there the implication, because at one point he like touches the ink too, and he's like, oh, this is bad ink. So is the implication they have like a bad printing press in this place, and he's just made documents that are not very good? Is that what they're implying?
I think it's like fresh ink. I think that's because it's like a signature on the document. I
Right.
think. It's so fresh, this ink.
But it works anyway. They get through.
They get through. He blames it on the secretary.
Yeah.
And they get through. So they're going to execute this plan, and then the professor realizes he left his pills at home. They've driven all the way out here.
No, he breaks his vial.
Oh, is that what happened?
That's what happened. Yeah. He goes to take his little shot or whatever, and he accidentally breaks it, and he's like, "Oh, my bad. I got to go back home." You're on your own for a little bit, Stryker.
It was very funny because I thought they arrived. They're like, "Time to do this." And he's like, "Oh, I got to go back home real quick." No. But that makes more sense to me.
It's slightly better than that.
Because I just wrote down, "Is the professor stupid?"
Just clumsy.
Well, the professor goes back to his stuff. Neil kind of just wanders around the pre-launch facility, just, hanging out, having a look.
What I like though is he's the worst at trying to look innocuous. He has a clipboard, but he doesn't even wander. He kind of just stands in one spot, and every people come by. He's like, huh. It's like at one point you'd be like, why is that guy just standing there? Doesn't he have something to do? He's been there for hours.
What I liked is, while he's just hanging around, he bumps into a guy who knows him.
Does he?
Oh yeah, he like grabs him. He's like, "What do you do?"
That's where he pulls that thing. Yeah, like there's some guy walks by, he stops and sees him. This is where he pulls a knife on the guy, and he ends up like
scissors
on this guy. Who is this guy who recognizes him?
Was he one of the pilots? Was he like a
space?
They reconstructed his brain, and now he was going back into space, but like still remembered him.
I don't think so.
I was like, is this like?
That'd been cool though.
I was like, is this supposed to be one of the orderlies from the hospital?
I think that must be the
also
implication.
works at the flight facility.
Ooh, maybe.
Maybe actually probably what it is. I'm just thinking out now. It's probably because they've seen his face put out in the wanted poster type thing.
But Neil recognizes him too.
Yeah, there's like a
moment you're right.
where they like snap zoom on each other's faces and
like,
actually
you and I'm like, who is this?
You know what it actually probably is? It's probably just left over from a scene that got cut out. And there was probably another scene where these two knew each other, but they're like, "Oh, we just cut that out. No one will notice." And then there's a scene.
He's
later
the
on.
florist who was driving the van earlier.
Yeah, that's right.
I could tell I was like checked out by this point because I remember that happening, but I was like, "Oh, who gives a fuck?"
I mean, all it leads to is he pulls scissors on him and then punches him in the face and throws him in a dumpster.
He ties his hands up with like the most flimsy piece of thread and is just like.
But I like that it wasn't enough. They actually had to have the scene where he drags him, puts him in the dumpster, ties his hands. I'm like, you guys are spending a lot of time on this one character to make sure we never because the viewer would be like, if he doesn't tie him up, that guy's coming back.
He even had a name. He's like, Eric. I'm like, who is Eric?
Yeah, he's introduced and expunged from the story as quickly.
Yeah, so quickly you forget about him because you didn't know who he was at the beginning. You're like, what happened?
But the karate chops are not done.
No, this is more of a punching job.
Yeah, I suppose it is.
We hop back to the professor's house here where he goes to find his medicine, and Bettina returns to his door because she wants to go find Neil to say goodbye to him. But
she looks a little worse for wear.
I was shocked by how beaten to shit she looked.
Yeah. It actually was a moment where I went, oh, like they've really it's a little dark for what is ultimately a very silly kind of movie. I was like, oh, this has got dark real quick.
For sure, where a guy's been bleeding out the entire thing, and that's been a non-thing. She shows up and she looks awful. Like she's got a huge black. Like it looks like they worked her over a lot.
Yeah, and they also don't really tell you because she starts describing the two guys that were in this basement, and you're like, I don't want to know like what's happened.
Yeah, it does sound like it is truly such a dark turn on a show that is just like so nothing up to this point. You're like, oh, gross, you guys.
Yeah.
But she wants to go find the man she loves, Neil, and say goodbye to him. The professor's like, no way. I still don't trust women.
Yeah.
He drives back. She just follows him in his car.
Yeah.
And in case we didn't want any suspense, while she's following in the car, she calls Benedict up on her radio and is like, I'm following him. We're going to the spaceport. So we know she's now a double agent. So the professor, not only did the professor set her up, he's just like, I'm going to make sure they turn you into a double agent.
Yeah.
Well, I think he's just proven to be right. He knew he couldn't trust a woman, and he couldn't.
But as soon as he arrives back at the flight center, she's immediately behind him, and she's like, please take me to Neil. And he's just like, you know what? Okay. I've decided to trust you after you followed me to the secret facility. Also, I don't know how she got past security, but it doesn't really matter.
It's like an early hint at Eternal Sunshine. It's like even despite her lobotomy, she still holds on to her love.
She still holds her love. I couldn't tell if that was the case or if this was like they planted something in her brain she needed to do. Like, you need to get back to Neil at any cost.
I think that's giving the show too much credit.
Oh, like she's like a part robot now?
Yeah, because like she's calling into Benedict being like, this is where I'm going. So like
Right.
they planted something in her, but that's basically it. Is Neil's been busy while they've been gone. He's karate chopped a gun off a security guard. He's busted into the astronaut changing room and has tied up all the astronauts.
Yeah.
And
one of whom was an old college friend.
An old college friend. The professor brings Bettina to him. He's like, here you go. Have a nice conversation. I'm going to go stand in the hallway for a few minutes. And this is where Neil, like, he takes off her headscarf to see her battered face. And we see, like, a drill hole in the side of her head.
Terrifying.
It was terrifying. And also, they shaved the side of her head. The actress had the side of her head shaved for this role. And I was like, man.
I thought the same thing. Because otherwise, it's a very good partial bald cap. But I thought the same thing. I'm like, oh, they actually shaved her temples.
There's no way this movie spent the money on that. I was just like, this poor actress.
Yeah. I just had an idea, though. You know how there's that rogue astronaut that he recognizes and recognizes him?
Yeah.
If it is a world that is like physical determinism and made up of the exact same materials, maybe it's
it's like a person he knows.
It's actually like a double, like everyone's a doppelganger on this world, and in the space program, it's probably the same people.
So do you think?
That
so
is
it's
really,
like Earth 2 friend.
So do you
space
think
guy.
in future episodes, Stryker's going to find himself but with a mustache?
Yeah, but the Terra people would notice that he looks like a famous astronaut that they have on his planet.
Absolutely.
Right.
You know what? I think you're right. That's got to be it. They'd be like, I finally recognize someone and he recognizes me. Like, I have a doppelganger here and this is a doppelganger of someone I know. I think that's it. I think you're 100% right.
So that's like got to be a future episodic plot point.
Maybe. I don't know if I buy it.
Yeah.
Jordan's skeptical still.
I'm skeptical.
I challenge you to come up for another explanation for that rogue character that he
That's
knows
true.
on a different planet.
It's a good explanation. Well, Bettina and Neil are like talking about her drill in her brain. The professor's standing outside in the hallway, giving them a moment alone. At which point, Benedict and his stormtroopers bust in. And I mean, I don't know. I didn't feel like Benedict knew who the professor was at this point. But they come in, they're like looking around the hallways, they can't see anyone. And the professor's standing at the end of a long hallway. He sees stormtroopers coming in. And he's like, uh-oh, I think the jig's up. And instead of being like quietly like sliding into the room and warning them, he starts banging on the door, shouting, Neil, 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 which attracts Benedict's attention. And then they just machine gun him to death in the hallway. I was like, Professor, you could have handled this so much better.
I was happy to see him go.
Yeah, I mean, no one's going to miss that professor.
No.
I do think like George Lucas had seen this movie though, because like the 3 moons from A New Hope, the
That is
Stormtroopers.
true. That is true.
There's for sure he's seen it.
It's possible. I think it's definitely probable even, because even the 3 moons effect, while still weak in this show, is very similar to the 3 moons effect.
I think
in
that's
Star
a good
Wars.
quote for the bottom of their DVD, but it's just you, Will, saying, George Lucas probably saw this.
There's a good, probably. It's not impossible.
Stormtroopers are like basically the same, but white.
Yeah, instead of a black costume, they're in a white costume.
Yeah.
But yes, now that the sort of all hell is broken loose, they're machine gunning
Thank
people.
you for specifying it's the costume I was talking about.
Just in case anyone was wondering what that reference is toward. Neil bolts into the tunnels upon hearing all this machine guns. There's like tunnels underneath this facility. You kind of get this chase sequence where Neil is shooting stormtroopers off of every gangplank or catwalk you see.
Yeah.
Like every
So-
stuntman has to fall 10 feet.
Here's what we've learned about him. You instantly fall in love with him when you meet him. He's smart. He's good with scissors, karate chops, and he also is a great shot.
Crack shot.
Yeah. That's everything you need right there.
I mean, this is just like stormtroopers in the Star Wars too. They can't hit anything.
Yeah.
Just like these guys. George Lucas definitely
It does
saw this.
become like an old Western scene where he's just shooting everybody. Like they can't hit him, and he's just knocking them like left, right, and center.
Even Benedict gets shot in the shoulder.
That's right.
I assume he never patched that up
And
either.
what is it that he sees? At one point, he sees something, and they can't follow him and can't shoot him because was it liquid
The
oxygen?
Yeah, the space
Liquid
shuttles
nitrogen, yeah.
are run by liquid oxygen. Is
It's
the
liquid
thing.
oxygen? Oh.
And it's all piped through the facility, and he uses that basically as cover so they won't shoot him. Like this is kind of what it leads to. is he follows these pipes to the edge of the ocean, and he's surrounded by, I don't know, 500 people. Like, it seems like every person in this base has like surrounded him, and he has no choice. He's definitely not getting on a spatial anymore. He has no choice but to leap off the side into the ocean. But as he leaps, he gets one final shot off,
and he shoots the tank,
and we get the most stock footage explosions, like 3 in a row.
Yeah, if you thought the helicopter looked bad,
I liked it.
Yeah, you like that?
I was just buying it, like with the helicopter sequence and this sequence. I was just
the explosions are the funnest part, for sure.
What I like though, so yeah, he jumps off and shoots it, and it's a huge explosion, like huge. But then they cut to like people just like running around and stuff, and I thought, no one is panicked enough. Like, this is a huge building has gone. Like, like there should be hundreds and hundreds of people dead.
It did feel like back at the launch facility, like there was no damage at all.
That's what I mean.
The explosion looked like it wiped it off the face of the earth. But it's hard when you're getting stock footage. Just get what you can get.
But our hero might be dead. He went into the water. That's it. That's the end of the show.
And old Benedict's fine. He's walking around with his arm in a sling. And his assistant's like, oh, yeah, he's dead. He's definitely dead. And Benedict's like, I want his charred bones.
Yeah.
He really hates him now.
He knows he can't trust him. He's too slippery. He could have got away.
Yeah.
But
the metaphor of like by the way, just to jump back to the like council that
the tribunal.
Yeah, that Tony Bennett had to go to. The actor who plays like his old boss, I felt like was very like terrifying. Like I thought he was actually like pretty good as that in that role. But I also like the metaphor of, you know, if you have one blemish on your like record, it's just a small dot on a big white canvas, but that dot is very
it's all you can look at.
It's all you can see, and that dot will become bigger and bigger.
It is true. That scene is one of the better ones of the show because that guy's very menacing, and he keeps it real casual. Like, it's a real casual conversation. He's never like menacing, but the undertones of it all are really good.
Yeah, and then I was just thinking, like, he's just mad. He's getting more and more furious as that black dot
just keeps growing. Yeah. But yes, this is kind of where the episode wraps up because Neil washes up on a beach somewhere else, bumps into a family who's just camping by the beach in the middle of the night, and he's like, "Hey, my boat capsized out there. Can you guys give me a ride into town?" And they're like,
am I back on Earth yet? No? All right.
Did this ocean take me to Earth? No? All right. And we leave him with a shot of 3 moons in the background. We're like, will he ever get home?
Do you get what his name he gives them? His fake name?
What was it?
James Mitchell. That was it.
Think he'll just use that for the rest of the show?
I think so. I think that's his new thing. It's James Mitchell.
There's a setup for that. But I mean, yeah, that like wraps up the show. And I think we've talked about it a little bit, but yeah, a typical episode of the show. Like it's him. I think it should be him going to somewhere we know from this Earth, but it's all topsy-turvy. Like he goes to Nashville and that's where the White House is.
Well, you would hope that, but again, they don't have a divergence at all. You know, like they sort of imply there is, but we've seen nothing. One, there's nothing really interesting or distinctive about this totalitarian system, and also there hasn't been a real divergence as much as that's what they want to play with. Maybe that would be what the future episodes are. We get, you know, these cars are exactly the same, but they run on something else or something like that. But it just seems like I think they just missed a turn there that could have been something fun to work with and would have made this a little bit more of an interesting evocative show.
Yeah. Well, what about
it's kind of an argument for totalitarianism in a weird way. Like you could have a totalitarian government and still all the luxuries you would have of a capitalist consumerist society.
Right. All you're giving up is a little bit of laughter and a little bit of music
and maybe whiskey at some point.
But I did read a little bit, and again, you mentioned before, there's not a lot of information out there in the show, but I did read that the people who made the show really just wanted, their pitch was science fiction fugitive. And we've seen that in a few other shows, that show apparently had, I mean, like the waves that show had, that everyone just wanted that version of something that you have to tune into every week. What's going to happen this week, and that sort of, and that's what they wanted.
This show is exactly the Planet of the Apes show we watched.
I know.
Astronauts crash at a place, it's topsy-turvy, and then they're hunted by a guy. I do figure, though, every episode, like the woman he loves gets lobotomized, right? Every episode?
Every episode.
I think that's
I'll tell you one thing.
Likely.
Every episode, you won't be able to trust her.
What do you think it is about, like, because it's not super dissimilar from, like, a Mirror Lake or, like, a Quantum Leap, or there's definitely a few of these shows that you guys have watched, but there's, you know, examples of winners of this same idea that, like, really did penetrate into mainstream.
I mean, I think what it is I mean, one of the things is some coherency. I think you're right. I think if they could have landed what this world was and the difference, like if you could have drawn a clear parallel,
Yeah.
so you could have those allegories and make them like land, you could probably make it work.
Right.
But because even when we get the explanation from the professor, it doesn't even cohere to the things we've already learned about this world ourselves.
Yeah.
So you're kind of just like, well, it's such a muddle. The idea is probably too muddled is the problem.
Yeah. But what are the winners of this sort of genre that
Clearly, The Fugitive was the archetype for a lot of these things in terms of the actual structure of the show.
Yeah.
But I think what you get is a lot of shows that try to fit other genres like sci-fi into that structure. I mean, I think Planet of the Apes that we'd watched was a little bit more successful than this. At least the first half, or I can't remember what half they kind of did that, was a little bit more successful. I think even having maybe no offense to this actor, but I don't think he was maybe the leading man they thought he was. I looked at his resume, and he did a ton of stuff in the 60s and stuff. Like, he was a character in a lot of things, and he's an actor who worked a lot, but I don't know if he is the leading man that they maybe want him to be.
Woody Allen was the
He's
most
no Leonard
charismatic
Nimoy.
guy.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that maybe would have helped a little bit. But I do think that Luke's right. I think it's not cohesive enough of an idea that this is it just doesn't quite work. The ideas are there, but they don't want to lean into it for whatever reason. It's probably budgetary. It's probably what it is.
Yeah.
It could be. I mean, I do think a little bit of it's just like the script is pretty muddled. Like, I think you could. Like, it's not a low, but like there's huge extra scenes. Like, it seems like they could have done something within the framework they had, but I don't know.
I mean, that helicopter chase sequence was $1 million
that was great.
at least.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. They clearly had some. They were going for something, but
Yeah. Did you guys ever watch that show Earth 2 where like there's a replica Earth that they use as the jail? It's like the Australia of the future.
I saw it when I was a kid, but it's been a long, long time.
I used to love it as a kid.
It is one of the examples. If you look up this theory of the Earth 2 or duplicate Earth, it is another of the examples of this theory of that. What if there was another Earth? You know?
Yeah, well, and I think Earth 2 is less on the other side. Like, I think they travel to a new solar system for it.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, because it's a Spielberg TV show, and it's more about pilgrims headed to a new world kind of thing. But yeah, it is the idea. It's just like, what if there was another Earth, kind of, and we just recreate it as we see fit. All right, before we wrap this up, I don't know if either of you did this, but I scrolled through all the YouTube comments just to see.
No,
because there were so many of them. Yeah, I got a few highlights here for you. See,
I'm so excited
of what people thought of or wanted to say about the show. Quote: I heard there really is a twin Earth on the opposite side of the sun. These movies just serve to make you think it is science fiction, but it is science reality fact. What do you think?
it's science reality fact.
It's science reality fact.
Sounds like a bot wrote that.
It's modern Obamerica.
Huh.
Whoa.
That's an extreme one. These TV movies, not like these were TV movies, not like the garbage that's on TV today. One man alone, thinking he was God. Hate to inform them, but he was God. Jesus Christ, God in flesh.
Whoa.
And here's one last one, and this one's for Will.
Doesn't sound like he actually hated to inform them. Sounded like he was really excited.
He's excited
to
for
inform
them. And this one is especially for Will. Total fraud. This has nothing to do with Albert Camus. Camus.
That's
sorry.
funny.
I saw that. I'm just like, when we emailed this to Will, he's just like, is this based in a Camus book? And I'm like, we'll find out.
Yeah.
This man
It is
knows.
not.
Total
Yeah.
fraud. All right. Well, that about wraps it up, I think, for the episode. So you guys want to rate it?
Yes, please.
Do you want to start, Will, or should we go first?
What did I give Bedazzled or Baffled?
I think you gave it probably, I would assume, in the 6 or 7 mark.
Oh, I don't think so. I think it was like 3 or 4.
Oh, do you think so?
Yeah. But
It doesn't matter. It's how you feel about this, how much you love this, how much you want T-shirts of it, you want to tell people about it. You're gonna spend your next holiday, anyone you meet, you're gonna go, hey, did you ever see The Stranger? And you go, no, not the Camus novel.
I think I'm gonna give it like a 2 because
Wow.
But I wanted lower than Baffled because looking back at my experience watching Baffled, it was probably way more nonsensical. Even than
It was
this.
a much better time.
Yeah, it was a great time. It was so much more fun to make fun of, and
It was far more. It was less of a slog to watch. I'll go next since I'm clearly giving away my review here. I liked one thing about this show, and it was that helicopter chase where I was sure some poor stuntman was going to die because it was so crazy.
Yeah.
I'm giving it a 1 for that helicopter chase.
I think I'm much more forgiving for this. I think maybe there's something about the cheesiness that I kind of just forgive and think it's kind of funny. It's not good by any stretch of the imagination. There's no, you can clearly see why this wasn't picked up as serious, but I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. Right down the middle, 5 out of 10.
Wow.
Jordan, you're very forgiving of these shows. I love it.
He wasn't, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't good, but turtlenecks, remember turtlenecks?
The
That was
turtlenecks
good.
were
Double-breasted
fantastic.
suits.
Yep.
Lots of scissor work.
Yep.
I mean,
Karate chops were great.
Karate chops were good. We mentioned the helicopters. A woman had to shave her temples.
Spying
Come on.
pig, Spygate pig.
There was a pig that may or may not be a spy. That's a standalone episode later in the series.
Still a 1.
Yeah. Well, I'd also just like to thank you both for having me on again.
Oh no, thank you for coming back.
Yeah,
It's I'm glad we got as much fodder out of the show as we did. I was legitimately concerned we'd all sleep through it at some point.
Well, and next time we'll get a cot for you.
A what?
A cot you could just lay.
Oh yeah.
You want to be
Just lay-
inclined the whole time.
I was at the Raptors game last night and watched it after the game, so that's
This was 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. for you. Was this show?
yeah. Do you guys post the link to the podcast on the YouTube channel?
Yeah. We'll have it there. We'll have it on Instagram. We'll have a bunch of clips from the show on Instagram and Twitter at Continue and Drag.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, other than Instagram and Twitter, you can email us if you're this guy on on YouTube. Want to email us in and tell us about Jesus in the flesh? You can email continueanddrag@gmail.com. And that about wraps it up. So yes, Will, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
It was a lot of fun tearing this thing to shreds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love doing it.
It's a 5 out of 10 though.
I disagree.
Respectfully disagree. Yeah. Jordan, another high caliber episode
I
as
know.
always. And listener, thanks for joining us. See you next time. Continuum Drag is recorded in Toronto, Ontario. Theme music by James Rexedler. Produced by Jordan Delic and Luke Black. Special thanks to Aaron Yunes, Adam Wheatner, Jeff Hanley, Jane McRae, and Stephen Packard.